hang out for a little while. It's the Dr. Cloud Show, and I'm glad that you have joined me wherever you are and whatever time it is. As you can tell, I'm still recouping on my knee recovery surgery craziness routine. So I have to sometimes when it gets kind of swollen and stuff, I have to ice it and put it up and elevate. So that's why we're here on. We should rename the show to the Shrink's Couch, because that's where we are. You're joining me on the couch today. And what we do, if you've ever gone to see if you went to a Freudian analyst, the analyst would sit behind the couch, and you would lie down on the couch, and you would say something, and he would go, That's about all he would say. The old time Freudians didn't talk a lot, but which is actually kind of interesting because Freud himself didn't really practice the way that the Freudians practice. That'd be an interesting show on the history of therapy one day. I'd like to do that. I might do that. Anyway, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk to you if you'll talk to me. 844-940-2774. 844-940-2774 is the number to call in and be on the program. 844-940-2774. Call me and we will talk about stuff. And speaking of stuff, we got a lot of stuff over at boundaries.me. Go visit the website, boundaries.me, and you can find all of our holiday special bundles on content. If you think, think of all the platforms out there like Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu and all that. You go on the platform, you have all of these programs in different genres: mystery, suspense, action, rom-com, all of that. And then you can select your show. Well, that's what boundaries.me is. It is a platform that we have been building over the last several years, actually. And we have over 90 courses on there of how to do life in the areas we care about: your clinical life, thriving and not being stressed, and anxiety and depression and addictions, and dealing with people with addictions and all of that kind of stuff, trauma, overcoming grief. Also, relationships, marriage and family and dating and work relationships and extended family, and how to manage those, and the skills you need, like how to set boundaries in difficult conversations, and all of that stuff about the relational world. And then the performance side of life, all about goals and what kind of goals work and what kinds don't. That's boundaries.me. And in addition to all those courses, we have, I don't know how many, we have a lot of full scale webinars that go deep into a lot of these issues, and that you can, at the holidays, we're bundling it all together, and you get the whole thing, along with, I come into your inbox every day with a specific action step, a coaching step, every single day. If you're a member, if you get our emails, that's not what this is. This is for boundaries.me members, every day with a specific step to take to get you further down the path. And there's a great community there to join too. So go to boundaries.me and check it all out. It's pretty cool. I just was able to gift. I'm looking at the calls coming in. I was able to just gift one to. I want to give a shout out to a couple of great missionaries who are doing great work with refugees in the Middle East, and a lot of things in Lebanon and stuff going on over there. Hoda and Camille, I want to say hi to you. Welcome to the States for your visit. Glad you're here and glad you're taking all this information back over there. And anyway, speaking of gifts, you can also gift a boundaries.me subscription to anyone you want to for the holidays. So if you want to give growth this year to a family member or a friend, go to boundaries.me. Okay, let me see about our calls here. And I'm figuring out, sorry, the one-man production team, I got calls coming in, and I'm trying to look at the phones because you guys are calling, and that's good. We're going to talk, but before we do that, we're going to go into the I started to say the thought for the day. If you listened to the program yesterday, I have this habit I found out that people told me about of when we're talking about psychological issues and science and neuroscience and neurobiology and psychology and brain stuff, that a lot of times when we're deep into how that works, I'll also say, one of my favorite verses says, and that's what I say, because there's always a verse about, God made the brain and God made relationships. So he's spoken to that. So I always mention these verses. So people started laughing at me about that. So I decided the thought for the day, I am going to connect each day when I do the daily thought for a while, see if you guys like it, that it's going to be one of my favorite verses. And that's what we're going to talk about today. But the concept is confusion of responsibility that leads to destruction in your relationships and in your life and in the life of the person you're trying to help. Did you get that? That's the concept. Okay, one of my favorite verses. It says this. It's out of Proverbs 6, verse 1 through 3. My son, if you have put up security for your neighbor. Now, what does that mean? Basically, it means if you've co-signed a loan. All right, now I'm going to take it past co-signing a loan to the concept behind it, which is not taking responsibility for another person's behavior, okay, that you cannot control. That's the concept here. So if you have put up security for your neighbor, if you've shaken hands in a pledge for a stranger, if you've been trapped by what you said, in other words, you agreed to do this, and now you're ensnared by the words of your mouth, it says, do this, my son, free yourself. Since you've fallen into your neighbor's hand, don't even go to sleep. Go over there and get out of this arrangement. All right. Now, on first glance, it seems nice and loving, right? To co-sign a loan. And I understand, to the pure, all things are pure, the Bible says. And there are times when people do that. And, it makes things work. A lot of times parents will do that for, an adult child who's buying a house, and they might put themselves on a loan to be able to get them to get in. There's a strategy to that and this and the other. But I think what it's getting at here is there are times when people put themselves in the position of becoming responsible for somebody else's behavior. And you can't control that. So now you are responsible for somebody else's consequences of their irresponsibility. Now, forget co-signing a loan. I wouldn't want to co-sign a loan if a family member or somebody I decided to help, I would actually make them a loan, right? You can do it directly. You don't have to co-sign. You can do it in ways where you can actually hold somebody accountable. But in this instance, if they don't pay, if they don't show up, if they don't do what they're supposed to, you're the one that pays. All right. So think about it apart from money for a second. How about somebody who's not paying the mortgage on their own temper problems? How about that? See, right now, as you can tell, because I'm sitting here on the couch with my ice machine, I'm 100% out of control of my dog's behavior. And there's nothing I can do about it. And she just went crazy because some stranger came to the door. See, there you go. That's what happens. Now, if I were in my right mind, I would have had control of that, but I didn't. But there you go, right? it's funny because I was mentioning when you've signed up to be responsible for somebody's out of control anger, right? So what does that mean? That means at a family gathering or a party or in a relationship, they're not taking responsibility. They're not making the payments on self-control. And they lose it and ruin everything for everybody. And then the peacemaker, the placater, go, oh, honey, it'll be okay. Oh, don't worry. Oh, that's okay. No, we'll do what you want. Well, see, now you've become responsible for making things better. When the one that ought to be making it better is the one that's doing the violating, the one that's not paying the mortgage payment. See, that's what it means. You have become, I love that word in the verses, you have become security for someone else. See, security protects somebody. So now you're going to protect somebody from their, let's take an addiction, for example. They're not making the mortgage payments on their addiction. You know what the mortgage payments on an addiction are? Going to an AA meeting or going to an SA meeting or being in recovery or going to therapy. That's making the payments on my own mortgage, my own life. But see, what happens in codependency is people say, well, you don't have to make the payments on your addiction. You can just live out your addiction and I'll make the payments. I'll cover for you. I'll put up with the isolation. I'll put up with the depression. We'll put up with the chaos in the family. So it's maybe an emotional issue, maybe a behavioral issue. Maybe somebody's a flake and they don't work. We were talking before the show about we all have friends who, or somebody, excuse me, somebody who their parents enable them, adults. Maybe they come from, a wealthy family and they really don't have to do anything, right? And their parents enable that, as opposed to the rest of us who hit adulthood. And did you ever notice this? When you hit adulthood, the reality came and knocked at your door. Hello, I'm here. You got to pay rent. Hello, I'm here. I will never forget. I will never, ever, ever forget this feeling. It is one of the biggest wake-up calls I ever had in my life. I was fortunate in that my parents did send me to school. My parents said, that's the one thing that we're going to do. We'll pay for your education. But once you graduate, my dad always told me from the time I was a little kid, he said, son, I didn't get to go to college. He came from a family that his father died and they all went to work early and he didn't get to go to college. And he said, I didn't get to go and I want you to go. He said, I've already put the money aside. If you can get a scholarship, that would even be better. He said, but I've already put the money aside. That's my job. He said, your job is to get the grades and to be able to get in and stay in. And I'm going to pay for it. Okay. Your job is to do the work. And then he said this, I'll never forget this. He always said, but when you graduate, I'm done. I'm done. You can drop by and I might give you a sandwich, but that's it. I'm done. And he was so clear about that. So clear about that. Well, here's the wake-up call. I remember when I graduated and I decided to go to work in a psychiatric hospital to take a year off before I went in, to my training to graduate school and internship and all that long road. It's like a long road. It's 4 years of graduate school after college and then internship. And then you got a couple of years after that of gaining hours. It's about an 8-year deal, 7 or 8 years. 6 or 7-ish, 7, 8, I don't know. It took a while. And I wasn't so sure I'm going to sign up for that. So I decided to take a year off and work in a psychiatric hospital. Well, with a bachelor's degree, you can't do anything in a psychiatric hospital much. I mean, you can't treat patients, but what you can do. But I wanted to learn. So I wanted to take that year and do it. But what you could do with a bachelor's degree is I could get a job as an orderly. And so my first year out of college, I'm a college graduate, and I went to work in a psych hospital for $3.33 an hour. That was the minimum wage back then. Yes, we had cars and electricity in those years. Anyway, I know it sounds like a long time ago. It was actually. Anyway, so I had to work. I worked for a year. But remember what my dad had said? He wasn't going to take responsibility, provide security, as the verse says, for an adult. I had to do that, right? It is not easy to live on $3.33 an hour. And I had to get really creative about ways to do that. But I'll never forget this one moment of reality. And here was the moment. I had graduated. I was working. I was getting my paltry paycheck and finding a way to find food, and I'd do extra jobs. I'd go down, this is in Dallas. I'd go down to the there's a big antique market there, and you could go down and find work unloading furniture for antique dealers. I would do that sometimes. I built some furniture and sold it, and many times patients would refuse their trays at the hospital. When the food comes in, they're on these big trays, and they say, "I don't want dinner," and I would go in the nurse's station to find dinner. So anyway, I made it through. But here was the big wake-up call. I needed a new pair of underwear, or needed to buy some underwear. And I realized, wait, I've got to use my money that I've earned to buy underwear? That's not fun. See, I'd always had jobs, earn my own money to do fun things. But when I was growing up, my parents gave me clothes. Now I found out I got to work and use my hard-earned money to buy underwear? That's horrible. Well, that's reality. And what reality does for us is it makes us meet those demands of reality, and then it grows us up. Very good thing. But see, if somebody has provided security for somebody, reality never comes knocking at the door. They don't have to pay the mortgage on that addiction. They don't have to pay the mortgage on that out of control behavior. They don't have to get an alarm clock, get out of bed to go to work. They don't have to worry about that immature pattern in their dating life. It keeps wrecking one relationship after another, or commitment phobia, or whatever it is. It can bounce around from fantasy to fantasy. But one day I'll do this, or one day I'll be this, or one day I'll do that. Because somebody is paying for that, emotionally, relationally, or in other ways. So that's your verse for the day. If you have become security for someone's irresponsibility, free yourself. And usually that involves a conversation. Every time you overspend and go do this and don't take care of your rent, and you call me the last week of the month, how many of you in that situation with an adult sibling or somebody, you're always bailing them out? Well, time for a conversation. Or, every time you lose your temper and you hurt everybody's feelings, and the Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner gets wrecked, I try to calm everybody down. Well, I'm not going to do that this time. I'm going to leave or go somewhere else, or we're going to ask you to leave or something. So control yourself, or you're drinking, or whatever it is. So one of my favorite verses, don't become responsible for that which you can't control. You can't control somebody else's behavior. And when you sign up to be security for that, that puts the math of the universe out of whack. See, the law of sowing and reaping says that whatever we're sowing, if you go to work, you get a paycheck. If you don't go to work, you don't get a paycheck. Oh, yes, you do, if somebody becomes a security. If you got a relationship dynamic that you need to mature in, and you go to therapy and you pay that mortgage on that therapy, meaning doing the hard work, or you go to AA or whatever it is, then you reap health out of that hard work. But if you sow to, I don't want to work on that, somebody else is going to have to pay for that. So for yourself. All righty, here's our work for the day. Where are we? Let's go to the phones. Joe calling us from California, listens on YouTube and the podcast. Joe, welcome to the program.
Hello, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you. How can I help you?
Well, a lot of people call your show and they talk about, problems outside, and I just want to get to the point. I'm the one with the problem. I've blown up my entire marriage.
Hold on a second. You're my new favorite person. Because you're right. A lot of people do. That's what happens to psychologists. Somebody comes in and is like, how can I help you? Well, my husband or my wife or and the problem's always outside the room, and that's normal. That happens. But it is so nice when somebody comes in and say, I have an issue I need to work on. So kudos to you. I don't know what your issue is, but way to go for taking ownership of that.
Yeah, I need some help. My question is, I just want to know if I'm doing the right thing. I'm on the right track. I've blown up my entire life. I've been married for 15 years. I have 3 kids. I used to work at a place that was very prominent in community, and now I don't because of some indiscretion of mine. And then I went and got hired at a really good law enforcement job, and then I left that because of some deep fear that I had of failure. All that to say is my wife and I were on the right track. Everything was going well, but I had a big blind spot that I did not tell her about, and as a result, I wasn't honest about that, and it triggered everything from before. This is about a 3-year journey now, and I am fighting for my marriage right now.
Let me make sure I'm understanding. When you say it triggered everything before, you had an indiscretion. Is that what you mean? That later there was another indiscretion which triggered the trauma from the first
one? Yes. The
the
second indiscretion was nothing like the first indiscretion.
Okay, all right. Let's just leave it at indiscretion if you don't want to be specific, but something that made her not trust you. Is that right?
Yeah. So the first indiscretion was with another person. The second indiscretion was I left my job out of fear, and I didn't tell her about it. I had a good law enforcement job, new career, and something came over me that was powerful enough for me to not ask for help. And so as a result, I left, and everything came crumbling down.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you couldn't ask for
separated.
help. Was there a lot of shame? Were you afraid that if you asked for help, was it shame or fear everybody would not help you or abandon you, or what was driving that?
Yes. Fear and shame, fear of failure, although I had nothing that would cause me to believe that I was actually failing. I was liked there, and I was doing fine. I felt like I couldn't do it. I'm like, man, I'm almost 40, trying to start this career. I'm older than most of these guys, and what's wrong with me right now? I will tell you, I was very immature. If I am dead honest, I need help with that still. A where I came from, a place I thought I was awesome. But now I'm just trying to see if I'm doing the right thing.
You probably had a lot of awesome parts that accomplished a lot in the world, except the one thing that our awesome parts can't accomplish, which is to heal and make up for the weaknesses that have to be addressed in their own right. So that's probably more what happened, right? You got a lot of strengths and you try to depend on those, but without facing the pains and the dependencies and the fears underneath it. And that's generally how we finally hit bottom. You know, our weaknesses kind of catch up with us. So don't feel bad about that, buddy. That's human. But now it's time to figure out the next step.
Yeah, like you said earlier, life has come and knocking.
Yeah,
and I'm fighting for everything that is important to me.
Tell me your question. How can I help you?
Well, I want to know if I'm on the right track, or at least going in the right direction. My wife and I don't communicate at all, really, at any level. It's just business. We've been separated for about going on 6 months now. I only get to see the kids basically every other week, you know, and phone calls are limited. She does not trust me at all. She thinks everything pretty much is a lie. I am in therapy. I have a wonderful counselor. I'm very grateful. I can tell you this, where I am now, I am grateful for, and I will be the person I'm supposed to be, with or without her, for God and for my family. I don't have what I would consider a solid support group. It's hard because a lot of people were hurt by me. I'm just trying to figure out, how do I re-engage? How do I connect with that? Am I on the right path doing that? Are those some good things in the very least?
Well, all those things are good things, with the exception of, and a couple of things you said are really good things. You said that you want to get well with or without her. And that's something we always ask in situations like this. If somebody's trying to perform the way back into the marriage, then that there's still a dependency there. Like, the reason I'm being good is so you'll be with me, which is a good reason to be good anyway. But you want somebody to be good for being good's sake, right? You want somebody to get well because you need to get well for you. Now, the benefit of that, hopefully, is you'll get your wife and your family back. So I really like that. That's really powerful. There's a lot of ownership here. You recognize that it was fear that was underlying this. The big question is, are you bringing the forces to bear to really help you heal with the weaknesses that drove this behavior? And so I would want, you said you're in therapy. That's a very good thing. But I would want you in a peer community that really supported this. And when I say peer, I mean other people that are going through it. Okay. Like, if you take a recovery group, for example, everybody in there is in recovery. And so they can identify with each other. The other thing you need is you need some external support of people that aren't going through it. So I like to see people have, I would like to see you have, you know, a group of men that you're connected to that that aren't struggling with these kind of things. They're doing well in their marriage. They're committed to their marriage. They're committed to their kids. Their career's going well, because we tend to become like the people we hang around. And so I want you becoming like the peer group that's struggling. Because why do I want you to be with a lot of peers that's struggling? Because I want you to be like them. I want you to be working on your issues. And that's really important. But I also want you to be around some people that are modeling the kind of life that doesn't have these issues, because that's really important. And I would want both. Okay. Now, let me give you one more tip here. Have you ever heard of my book, Necessary Endings?
Yes.
I wish we had book inventory. We don't, or I would send you one. But I would suggest you go take a look at that book. And in there, there's a list. You could also, I'm going to gift you a subscription to boundariesme. Give Albie your information. There's a chapter in there on when to have hope. When to have hope.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have a necessary endings. I mean, on boundariesme, we have a course on necessary endings. So you're going to get all this content because now you're a boundariesme member. How about that? So there's you're welcome. There's a section in there on when to have hope. We also have a course on hope, I'm finding out, which I should have known. I filmed it. We also have a course on hope. But I want your wife to know when she should have and open the door to hope and when she shouldn't. In other words, right now, she's not trusting because of good, real reasons of things that have happened. Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
But there's also really good reasons to begin to trust somebody after a failure. It's just difficult for people to know which one to do. And that course will tell you the objective reasons, which a lot of them you're doing. And the other reason I want you to look at is then I want you to go down that list. And you said, am I doing the right things? If you're doing these things, then I would bet on you. Right? These are the things that make people trustworthy again. So it's not over, buddy.
Okay.
I've seen a lot of people come back from,
I believe that.
Times just like yours. So keep at it. My heart goes out to you. I'm sure that, if you look on whichever you're on YouTube, I guess there's going to be a lot of support there for you. And I got a verse for you. One of my favorite verses is, I think I mentioned this yesterday, actually. Right before Peter went out and failed miserably, he betrayed a trust in Jesus. Remember, he denied him 3 times. Right before he did that, Jesus predicted that. And then he said this. He's looking at the failure that Peter's about to have. And he says, you're going to fail 3 times. But then after you have returned, you're going to become the source of strength for many. And that's what I want for you. That if Jesus were looking at you, which he was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, he saw all this coming, but he can see past that to when you're doing all the hard work, that you're going to be somebody that's trustworthy and you'll be able to be the source of strength for other people. So I'll leave you with that. God bless you. And thank you for your call. There's nothing, gosh, there's just nothing better than redemption. I hate it that we live in a world now where somebody can make a mistake and it's like lights out. They're canceled for life. And I'm not talking about enabling bad behavior. We need to call out bad behavior. But don't we want a world where we believe that people can change and get better? Isn't this why we do this every day? Remember when the woman was caught in adultery and they brought her to Jesus and said, the law says stone her, kill her, cancel her, really cancel her. And he turned to the whole group and said, well, any of you that has never sinned, you throw the first stone. He said, neither do I condemn you. Now go and become somebody who can be trusted. Paraphrasing there, he said, go and sin no more. People can change, people. But you don't change on a promise. You change on objective realities. That's why we have that course on when to have hope. Go to boundariesme and you can look that up. All righty, let's go back to the phones. How are we doing on time? We can have time for At least one more call. Lance, calling from Colorado, watches on YouTube, has a dating question. Lance, welcome to the program.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Oh, good. So thanks for taking my call. I just had a question for you on kind of finding out when it's time to keep pushing through a relationship or when it's time to call it and say you tried.
What kind of relationship?
So just a
What
dating
kind?
relationship.
Because it depends on the kind of relationship. You know, if you're talking about pushing through with a parking attendant, whether or not they're going to make that space available fast enough to go shopping, that's different than other kind of relationships where you want to persevere a little more. So
Right.
what kind of relationship are we talking about?
We're dating. So
how long?
And we've been friends for a few years, and then we dated for a few months. We called it off, took a few more months to do whatever, and then we started dating a few more months ago. And it's not an unhealthy relationship per se. She's very loving, very patient, but I've been working through some compatibility issues and things that I just haven't really felt a lot of peace or fulfillment over. But I've also seen that.
Did you say compatibility issues? Is that what you said?
I'm trying to kind of go through that and see if initially it's like, yeah, I think we're compatible. And then I go back and like, I'm not sure we are. So it's just kind of what I'm working through. And I also noticed that, are you familiar with the How We Love book, Mylan and Kay Yurkovich?
I'm familiar with it. I don't know it well. I know the research. I know the attachment styles research. I know all that.
I forget what they have it listed.
I can't point to chapter and verse of the book, is what I'm saying.
Sure. I can't remember what Vacillator maps over to. If it's, I've seen it called Fearful Avoidant, and I've seen it called Vacillator. I don't know if that tells you anything, but that definitely seems to be a struggle of mine.
How old are you?
It's just like 34.
34. Have you had other relationships where abandonment fears or insecure attachment kind of got in the way?
Well, I do know that it's always me to call off the relationship, even though one lasted 4 years, but it probably shouldn't have lasted that long.
Yeah.
It's usually me that's kind of dissatisfied. So I don't, yes and no. I just always wondered, I'm like, would somebody else be dissatisfied in my shoes kind of thing?
Well, probably not, but some people would. I mean, you can't look at it that way because, I mean, why does anybody marry anybody except that somebody else didn't marry them, right? So, I mean, somebody was dissatisfied with her before Joey came along and married her and vice versa. So I think the question is, what you're asking yourself is, would a healthy me be satisfied with her versus an unhealthy me? That's the real
I think
question.
so.
All right.
And the problem
is, if I didn't have insecure attachment
stress
issues, then would I be wanting to break up? Right.
Yeah. And it seems like it causes me just a lot of internal stress where I'm just going back and forth in my mind trying to figure this out all the time.
That's awful. That's terrible. I've only got a few minutes here, and I want you to give me one quick example of a compatibility issue. What are you in this relationship? What are you thinking? I don't know if this is a relationship for me because ... What would be the issue that's not? What's missing? You guys have had a lot of time to know.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I think I kind of like these deep connection, deep conversations and things. But her not so deep conversation and like this kind of real, I think that's how I connect with people. It's like deep conversation, where her not so much. She's super smart, but she's just doesn't have strong opinions about things or doesn't go that deep. And I go back and forth. I'm like, man, can I get that somewhere else, or does that need to come from her?
Well, wait a minute.
That's one example.
Well, do you want to have a shallow marriage?
Well, no, I don't.
Well, then, so what? What's the question?
Well,
that's not an attachment.
That, you know,
that's not an attachment issue. That's some people can go deep in the conversations. Marriage is not a long date. I mean, it is a long deal, right? Now, there are people that really they head deep, don't want to go there. I want shallow. They marry somebody shallow. I mean, there's no rules here, but you just got to ask yourself, do you want a shallow marriage? So what's the next issue?
Yeah, I just thought like maybe some of that can come from others. Well, I've been counseled that some of it could come from other people, and maybe that. But yeah, that's a good point.
Well, great. Let's pretend that it, or assume that it can, and it can. It definitely can. There are people that are in marriages. That's why I said it depends on what you want. But what is it? What else is what is another issue?
It just seems like oftentimes I just kind of struggle to connect since we've gotten deeper into things about, like, you know, our thoughts on life and spirituality, stuff like that, where we did not as friends. We made very, very good friends.
Where you did not what?
We didn't have any issues as friends, but the more.
Oh, you did. You would have had issues. You would have had issues if you were talking about it, but you weren't talking about it.
Yeah, that's true. We didn't really dive in, obviously, to all of those things. I think when we dated, I kind of went head first into, you know, how do you feel on this and how do you feel on that?
That's why you date, so you can get to know somebody better, and you find out where you connect and where you don't. I mean, it just sounds like, and I don't know. I wish we had a lot more time up against a hard stop today, but
sure.
But I think you've got to. The way you've described it to me, it sounds like there are some things that are missing here, and you just have to decide, are they important to you or not? Because you can't hope that they're going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, being satisfied in a relationship is only something that you can answer. And I don't hear a lot of satisfaction, and I hear multiple attempts to try to hope that you can produce that, and the doubts are still there.
Yeah, but there's something missing, and I've been trying to pinpoint it, and I just get in my head over the attachment stuff. It makes me really question a lot.
Well, sometimes attachment issues can have a mechanism called devaluation, where you begin to make the person bad in your own head to protect yourself. But I would want you working on those and getting healthy, so that when you're in a relationship, then the issues might come up, but you're pretty sure that wow, I'm in this relationship for good reasons. Now, I don't know the answer to this, and I don't want you to take anything that I'm saying as being true, because I don't know you well enough. But I will say this: I would like to see you go see a good therapist who understands the attachment issues, and then I would like for you to make a decision that you're going to finally decide to take a big step, which would be ultimately marriage. That you're going to take a big step when you're satisfied, either because you've worked through the issues or you found a person that you can really connect with. All I'm saying is you don't want to get married on a hope. And if you've given yourself long enough, you know when that is, then you can't make something happen that's not going to happen. So that's where I just don't want to see people get married on hope that it'll be different. I want to see people get married because they find somebody that they really don't want to live without. I remember when I was single, I loved my single life, and I said, I'm only gonna get married if I find somebody that I really just don't want to spend my life without. And that's what I'd like for you to feel.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for that advice.
All right, I got to run. Go take a look at it. I'm going to gift you the webinar, How to Get a Date Worth Keeping. Give Albie your info there, and we'll do that. Okay, guys, that's a wrap for today. I I wish I could talk to everybody so far. Gosh, I wish we had forever to talk. There's so many good issues here. But remember, don't provide security for somebody that's not taking responsibility for their issues, which was our word for the day earlier. And make sure the other thing you do is go over to boundariesme and check it out for the holidays. There's a lot of great deals and offerings and bundles there to do that. And one more surprise. That's not a surprise. Shouldn't be a surprise. It's going to say, I'll see you tomorrow. It won't be a surprise. We'll be here. I mean, God willing, if the earth doesn't end or we don't have the big one here in California. I mean, maybe we could have the big earthquake and still have a show. I don't know. Anyway, I'm planning on being here tomorrow. I'll see you guys. Thanks. See you then.